Okay, welcome back. The next measure of central tendency is the mode. The mode basically just means the most frequently occurring score. Occurring score. Okay? In other words, what score is the most popular? What score is occurring the most? Alright, so the easiest way to understand this probably is to think of it in terms of frequency tables or frequency counts or something like that. Let's just do this really simply to get us started. Here's Mike and Joe and Mika and Tony, okay? And each of them score on our 3-point quiz, again, just to keep it simple. Right, 3, 3, and 1, and 0. Okay? So, which of these scores is the most frequently occurring? Which one happened the most, right? The answer is 3, right? So this is pretty simple. The mode is equal to 3. All right. Let's do one that's a little bit more complicated. Mika and Joe and Bobby and Sue and Tony. Okay, so here let's say 3, 3, 1, 2, and 2. Now, which one of these scores is the most frequently occurring? Well, the answer is 2 scores are, right? 3 and 2. So what do we do here? Well, the answer is we would probably say that there are actually 2 modes. 3 and 2. Right? Because there's one here and one here. You might say, well, why don't we split the difference? Well, the mode is pretty specific. It's the most frequently occurring score, or in this case, the most frequently occurring scores, right? So it actually can't be split between the two. Let's look at one more example. So a 3, a 3, a 1, a 0, and a 0. Okay. Now this distribution of scores has 2 modes, right? Again, there are 2 3s and 2 0s. So the modes are 0 and 3. Okay. And if you were to sort of graph this out in a frequency distribution, frequency 0, 1, 2, 3, and down here scores 0, 1, 2, and 3, you can see that here, right, you have this, and then over here for 3, you have this, and then down in between the two you have this trough. So if you get really sort of clever, you can think of this as a sort of camel's back, if you will. There's the camel. 1 hump, 2 humps, there's his tail. It's kind of a boring morning if you're trying to teach stats lectures. So here you have your camel distribution. It's bimodal, okay? So you would call this a bi, meaning 2, modal distribution. Now, can you have trimodal? Sure. We tend not to see them. But we tend to call these things either unimodal, obviously one mode, right? Bimodal means 2, right? Or we sometimes just call them multimodal, which just means there's a bunch of them, right? And there can be a whole slew of them. Can a set of numbers not have a mode? Yes, and sort of no. I know, sorry. So let's imagine that we have a frequency distribution that looks like this. 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. And let's say that 2 people get 0s, and 2 people get 1s, and 2 people get 2s, and 2 people get 3s. Excuse my bars, they should all be about the same. This is what we sometimes call a flat distribution. Right? It looks flat anyway, right? Like a table, okay? Because there isn't a peak or a valley or any sort of changes amongst these scores, this doesn't work well for stats. This can occur, but it tends not to. This basically has no mode, right? But in another way, really every single score is the mode, right? So I would refer to this as a distribution with no modes, okay? This tends not to happen. Normally there's at least one score that, at least for some fluky reason, has a mode or is more frequent than the others, and then that score becomes the mode. The way that we tend to sort of view data or think about modes has to do with frequency distributions, just like we were drawing. So when you do a frequency distribution, like I sort of illustrated with my lovely camel of science drawing, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, okay? Because we tend to think about it in terms of where is the sort of hump in the distribution. So let's say one person gets a 1, 2 people get a 2, one person gets a 3, right? The peak, right, of the distribution, the highest point, in the frequency distribution is the mode. Okay? So this point, because it's like the peak of a mountain, right, is the mode. So let's take one more look. Okay, so let's say that 3 people get 0s, 0 people get 1s, 1 person gets a 2, 0 people get 3s, right? Where is the peak of this distribution? It's over here, right? So that's where the mode is. In this case, the mode is a 0. So you should be able to look at a frequency distribution graph like this and be able to quickly identify the mode. Let's try one more. So these are scores, right? Okay. And let's say that we have nobody gets a 0. Say 3 people get 1s. Let's say 1 person gets a 2, and then 3 people get 3s. This is the camel hump, right? So in this case, we know that there are actually 2 modes at the peaks. So in this case, the mode would be 1 and 3. Okay? I tend to graph it out first when I'm sort of looking for modes and trying to determine if things are unimodal or bimodal. We tend to not use the mode quite so much as you would think, because the mode is really based on a single sort of number, and it gets lost when you start talking about where the center of a group of numbers is. So is this really the center of this group of numbers, right? Because this is supposed to be a measure of central tendency. Is that really indicative of where the middle is? No, not really. And if you have a truly bimodal distribution, right, where maybe the other mode is down here, then that's not really typical of it either. It's not really an indicator of the middle, okay? So this one tends to be underused. There's a special time when we do use it, though. Okay, so the mode is the only, excuse me. The mode is the only measure of central tendency that makes sense if you have nominal data. Okay, so this is the time when it really does come in handy. So remember, nominal data, right, are things like gender, nationality, etc. So if the modal gender is male, right, in other words, right, you'd code this, so let's say 1 is male, 2 is female, right, so this is gender. And over here is frequency, this is 0, let's say this is 1,000 or something like that, right? And so you have something like 1,000 males, and you have something like 500 females, right? Here, the modal gender makes sense. That's something that would be useful. It just means that most of the people that were in your survey or in your study were male. All right. Well, thank you for sticking with me through the 3 measures of central tendency. This one was mode. Mode, much like median, there's probably formulas for it. You don't need to have them, I don't think. Okay. Everybody have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.